Good morning, everybody. It's 10:15. Welcome to the church in Ocean Park. I'm Louise, and I know everybody on this call. So let's start off with a song. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind, it was stayed on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. There ain't no harm to keep your mind stayed on freedom. There ain't no harm to keep your mind stayed on freedom. There ain't no harm to keep your mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. We're gonna walk, walk, I'm gonna walk, walk. We're gonna walk, walk with my mind on freedom. Talk, talk, I'm gonna talk, talk, I'm gonna talk, talk with my mind on freedom. Oh, 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 oh. Walk, walk, walk. Well, singing and praying with my mind. Oh, stayed on freedom. Come on. Singing and praying with my mind. Stayed on freedom. Well, I'm singing and praying with my mind. Stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. We're gonna walk, walk, we're gonna walk, walk, we're gonna walk, walk with a mind on freedom. Talk, talk, I'm gonna talk, talk, I'm gonna talk, talk with my mind on freedom. Oh, 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 oh. We're gonna walk, walk, we're gonna talk, talk. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Well, I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Well, I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. One more time, hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Good morning.
And morning. Hello, and my name is Joseph Hepburn, and we are all here to welcome you to this unique interfaith community that is dedicated to social justice. Now, you may be wondering if you are welcome here. We are interfaith, so you are welcome if you are Jewish, Muslim, if you are Hindu, Buddhist, Christian, even atheist, or some combination or something else altogether. You are welcome if you just came in from a protest march, if you aren't able to attend marches right now, or are confused about what to do. You are welcome if you work too hard, if you don't have a job, or if you did not get the position that you wanted. You are welcome if you are a renter or a landlord or still looking for a home. We extend a special invitation to those who are single, married, divorced, gay, transgender, rich or poor. We extend a special invitation to those who are just browsing, just woke up, or even just got out of jail. We don't care if you're more religious than the Pope or more sanctimonious than the King. We extend a special invitation to those who are Gen Zs, Gen Xs, millennials, baby boomers, and those who are too mature to be even classified. Welcome. We invite soccer moms, tree huggers, latte sippers, vegetarians, junk food eaters. We invite those who are in recovery, still addicted, having problems, or down in the dumps because you don't like organized religion or heard that this was a strange church. And so we offer a special invitation to those who could use a prayer right now. These are hard and difficult times, or those who have had religion shoved down their throat as a child. We invite tourists, seekers, doubters, bleeding hearts, and you. Welcome to the church in Ocean Park.
Thank you. Thank you, Chaplain Joseph. I'm Janet Valerie McKeithen, and I'm also welcome you to the church in Ocean Park. I'm the minister here, and I want to let you know that you may hear things that you disagree with because we are a diverse congregation and a group of people, and that's by intention. We try to hear perspectives that we don't normally hear. It makes us more able to work together to create a more equitable world. We want to acknowledge that this morning we're all sitting on land that was taken from people in Santa Monica. The land was taken from the Chumash, the Quiche, and the Tongva peoples. We honor and respect them. We also recognize that our communities were built on the backs of people who were stolen from Africa. And we acknowledge and respect and work together to create a more equitable world. Let's take a moment and remember where we sit. Welcome to the church in Ocean Park.
Now let us bring ourselves fully into the present. Our thoughts are here now, not in the past, not in the future, but right here. And we'll sing, I have arrived, I am home, in the here and in the now 3 times, a chant by Thich Nhat Hanh. I have arrived, I am home, in the here and in the now. I have arrived, I am home, in the here and in the now. I have arrived, I am home, in the here and in the now. I can only be in the present when I'm singing. I love that. Okay, so now we're going to sing Soon I Will Be Done with the Troubles of the World. This is a traditional song, and also you can hear Sweet Honey in the Rock sing this. Soon I will be done with the troubles of the world, the troubles of the world, the troubles of the world. Soon I will be done with the troubles of the world, going home to live with God. Sing that with me. Soon I will be done with the troubles of the world, the troubles of the world, the troubles weeping and wailing no more. Weeping and wailing, going home to live with God. No more weeping and wailing no more. Weeping and wailing no more. Weeping and wailing, going home to live with God. Last time now, soon I will be done with the troubles of the world. The troubles of the world, the troubles of the world. Soon I will be done with the troubles of the world. Going home to live with God. Soon I will be done with the troubles of the world. Troubles of the world, troubles of the world. Oh, soon I will be done with the troubles of the world. Going home to live with God. I'm going home to live with God. Going home to live with God. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Chris Chappell. This is my colleague Abhishek Jain. And this beautiful design was crocheted by church member Hope Blacker in honor of her good work and her appreciation for her good work here at Loyola Marymount University. And I'm very happy to introduce our speaker for today, Valerie Richards. And she not only is a social worker, she's a Buddhist. She graduated from Smith College and has been engaged in social work and the teaching of social work for 32 years. She's taken a chaplaincy training at University of the West, the Buddhist university in the San Gabriel Valley. And her areas of expertise are grief and loss, clinical work with children, adolescents, and adults. And she works with issues of societal oppression and cultural diversity. She has been part from time to time of Maureen's meditation group on Tuesday nights. Anyone's invited to inquire and participate online. And she has taken many courses on mindfulness, on self-compassion, and on related applications of Buddhist insight. She traveled to 2 witness-bearing retreats in Alabama and South Dakota with the Zen peacemakers. And Bernie Glassman, who received his Roshi status here in Los Angeles and went on to found the Zen Center of New York, developed this wonderful opportunity for people to sit in places of suffering in solidarity and in communion and community with those who have gone before. Valerie loves bird watching, studying African-American history, and her favorite cat, Oliver. So welcome, Valerie, to Church of Ocean Park.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Chris. It's so nice to see you and Maureen here. I also just wanted to thank everyone here, Reverend Janet and Kim Harris, who isn't here today, for inviting me to participate and talk with you on the celebration of Nirvana Day. I thought I would take the time to talk to you a little bit about a couple of ideas, and also, well, first, the Bearing Witness retreats that I attended, and also about spiritual friendship. In looking at your website and talking to both Maureen and Kim about your community, I understand the mission around progressive ideas and action, and I think that I am honored and humbled to be here today to talk to you a little bit about Nirvana Day, the Buddha, and its application today for all of us. Let me just say that I was a cradle Catholic. I was born into Catholicism. My parents converted to Catholicism from being from being Baptist, sorry. And they were both were born in the segregated South. When they moved to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, as part of the Great Migration North, their families went there to escape the segregation of the South and the harsh Jim Crow laws. And my mother was convinced that in order for her children to get a better education, that she wanted us to go to Catholic school. So both my brother and I attended Catholic schools for 12 years. For me, after college, or during college, I attended church, but it didn't seem as relevant to me. And I also had challenges around some of the ideas and doctrines of the church that didn't really seem to fit with my values. But then in the early 90s, I guess it was, I told one of my friends who was a professor of religious history of India, a Smith professor, that I was thinking of changing faiths and that I was looking. And he urged me to go back to the Catholic Church. He said, there are so many beautiful rituals there, and Val, please reconsider. I was a school social worker at the time in Washington, D.C. And when I returned to for the school year, when the principal told me, I have the perfect church for you. And the church was St. Augustine's. St. Augustine's is the oldest Black Catholic church in the District of Columbia. And I cried for the first 6 months every day that I went. The homilies and the music were just beautiful to me. The relationships that I made at the church actually have continued to today. But I moved out here and took a job at Children's Hospital and continued my work as a social worker. In doing that, I worked with children and adolescents and their families for 14 years, developed a grief and loss class, which I taught at USC. And in some ways, I was considered an expert on grief and loss. In 2010, my parents died 6 weeks apart. And I felt like I had been duped. Everything that I thought I knew about grief and loss didn't seem to help me. And Dennis's daughter suggested that I try Vipassana meditation because my coping skills weren't working. Well, as I think about it in retrospect, whose coping skills would work when their parents died that close together? And so, but at the time I was feeling that somehow I was not handling it very well. And so I started attending mindfulness classes. And the thing that struck me, particularly at that time, was the idea of the Four Noble Truths. And I will tell you what they are. The Four Noble Truths, which Buddha put forth, were there is suffering. The second noble truth is that there are causes for suffering or reasons for suffering. The third, that the causes can be transformed or terminated. And fourth, the way to transform or terminate the causes is through the path. And the path is considered the Eightfold Path. And so I'm just going to name those briefly: the right view, the right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And I think in particular, the ideas around suffering, given where I was, appealed to me. Now, I just want to say that while I am a student of Buddhism, that's what I consider myself, because there's so much to learn, and I will not live long enough to learn everything. I also felt as if some aspects of Catholicism are so important to me because I still practice those as well. I'm not a member of a congregation, but having grown up Catholic, if I am in getting an MRI or a CT scan, I might start chanting, but in the middle of it, a Hail Mary will come out, and I have to do that as well. So I would call myself a little bit of a hybrid of both, because when in doubt, for me, I think about Mary and ask for her help. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about my experiences with the Zen peacekeepers, or Zen peacemakers. I keep doing that. And I decided to go on first the trip to Alabama. When I saw that they were having a trip to Alabama, I knew I had to be there. I had to go. And part of the reason I had to go was because while I was at Smith, I initially was a government major. And then I decided that I was seen as a Black person, and I needed to know more history about my people, the contributions, and try to understand the dynamics that were going on. And so I've been, as Chris said, I've been an informal learner in terms of Black history all of my life. So I've spent the last 40 years learning. And I thought that going to Alabama was going to be the culmination of all this learning. Well, in fact, it was just the beginning. I feel like I have to go back to Alabama because I need to really understand and to experience it. The week that I was in Alabama wasn't enough. And I want to read this to you because I get texts every morning from the Equal Justice Initiative, and reminding us of things that happened in the past. So the song this morning about the opening song of "I Woke Up This Morning with My Mind on Freedom" really spoke to me. This day, February 12th, 1946, police chief in South Carolina beats Black veteran Isaac Woodard, leaving him blind. On February 12, 1946, Sergeant Isaac Woodard, a Black World War II veteran, boarded a Greyhound bus in Georgia, heading home to his wife in North Carolina. He had been honorably discharged from service just a few hours earlier. When the bus stopped outside of Augusta, South Carolina, Sergeant Woodard, who was still in uniform, asked the driver if there was time to use the restroom. The driver cursed at him and resumed driving. Talk to me like I'm talking to you, Sergeant Woodard told him in response, asking, "I'm a man just like you," adding, "I'm a man just like you." After a brief argument, Sergeant Woodard returned to his seat. At the next stop in Batesburg, South Carolina, the bus driver exited and called Linwood Shull, the local police chief, who arrived soon after. Officer Schul removed Sergeant Woodard from the bus and began brutally beating him with a blackjack. Sergeant Woodard, who was unconscious and badly injured, was then left in the jail overnight. The next morning, the city court fined him for disorderly conduct. When Sergeant Woodard was finally transferred to the VA hospital in Columbia, South Carolina, doctors determined that the beating and the delay in medical treatment had permanently blinded him. In October 1946, President Harry S. Truman ordered his Attorney General to bring federal charges against Chief Schul. The trial began a month later and was presided over by Judge Waring, whose father was a Confederate soldier. After deliberating for less than 20 minutes, the all-white jury in the trial acquitted Officer Schul. And this, of course, reminded me, or was resonated with me, with the murder of Tyree Nichols recently. And part of what I wanted to talk to you about in terms of my trip to Alabama was that we went to Selma, we went to Montgomery, and we went to Birmingham. The thing that struck me so much while I was there was the arbitrariness of the lynchings and the killings. And I use the word arbitrary because I think for most of us in our history, we sometimes learn about lynching, but there's always this specter of the person has done something wrong. You think about Emmett Till, he whistled or spoke or said something to a white girl. You think about other people that may have done something wrong. In this case, you hear about the way in which Chief Schul beat Sergeant Woodard. What I saw as I walked through the Legacy Museum and saw the explanations for why someone was lynched were things like a Black man whose daughter had been attacked by teenage white males, went to the jail and asked that they be arrested. He was lynched. There was a woman who complained because her husband was lynched. She was lynched. There were people that, if they didn't know who had committed a crime, it didn't matter. People were lynched. If you think about the things that happened in our history, we have to understand our history in order to understand our present. So much of what we're dealing with now is a result of unresolved issues that we keep having to go through over and over again. This incident, this blinding of Sergeant Woodard happened 77 years ago. And yet, if you think about it and you just change the dates, it sounds like Tyree Nichols to me and other people like Tyree Nichols. And so this part for me, in Buddhism, the acknowledgement that there is suffering. And this acknowledgement around suffering isn't just something that happens only to some people. The commonality, the universality is that we all suffer. We all lose people that we love. We all age. We all will be separated from those that we love and things that we love and things that we are attached to. And so for me, Buddhism, coupled with my knowledge and understanding of Catholicism, is the way in which I try to make sense of the world. I will just say one other thing. I think I'm running out of time, but I'll just say one other thing. I said this to Reverend Janet when I met her this morning, that, you know, in my 20s, everything was so crystal clear. I knew the answers. In my 30s, I was like, I don't know. The things are a little shaky here. By my 50s, I felt like I had more questions than answers. And I think that the two faiths, the two, I call it faith, but Buddhism is a lifestyle that anyone of any faith or non-faith can participate in. They help me to make sense of the world around me. And I hope that you will take the time to explore how Buddhism might be resonant in your lives. I would just like to say one other thing, and that's about spiritual friendship. When I think about this story, I start to laugh. So Buddha had an assistant. He was his closest. He was actually cousin. His name was Ananda. And Ananda comes running up one day and says, Master, friendships, that's half of the spiritual life. And the Buddha says, no, you're wrong, Ananda. And you know that Ananda was crestfallen because he thought that he had the answer. And the Buddha tells him that spiritual friendships are the whole of our spiritual lives. And in terms of the whole, I will just leave you with this thought, that a virtuous friend is someone who uplifts your path to a higher level of ethical and spiritual well-being. Strong communities, of which I think this is one, depend on the personal relationships between its members. And so the thing that I have come to realize, both when I participated in the church in DC, St. Augustine's, but also in being a part of the Sangha that Maureen and Eric facilitate, is that those friendships help me to view the world and behave in the world in a way that allows me to have an intention about being kind, have an intention about showing compassion to others, and that suffering is something that we all experience. And I just would like to say thank you to the community for listening, and I hope that we can have a dialogue about some of the things that I've said this morning. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Valerie. That was a beautiful talk. Now we have another song by the Rivers of Babylon. By the rivers of Babylon, where we sat down and where we wept as we remembered Zion. By the rivers of Babylon,
Beautiful. And thank you so much, Valerie. I really appreciate you being with us this morning. And I love the fact that you're a hybrid. We call it multiple religious belonging, and many people are. And that's one of the things that I think we are beginning to realize is most people are not only one faith tradition. And sometimes you get in churches or synagogues or mosques or something, and they expect you to be only one. And really, many people are multiple religious belonging. So thank you for that. Now's the time for our community sharing. And so if you have something you'd like to share or you have a question, we'll start with Abby.
I like the part about spiritual connections or spiritual friendships. I live alone, and so a lot of the time I have is by myself. It's not that I don't have friends and family, but I wondered about what Buddhism or what you personally would have to say about spirituality for the individual.
Actually, I do have some thoughts about that. I'm a single person. I have lived with an animal companion for almost the entire time I've been in California, so about 25 years. I read a koan, which is kind of a riddle in Buddhism. And in that koan, an older woman who lived alone, I believe in China, was met by a monk. And the monk asked her, who is your family? And she said, the rivers, the lakes, the mountains, they're all my family. And that was the first time, because I live in California by myself. My brother and his family live in Texas. And that's the first time that I realized that I wasn't alone. There is this interconnection for us, even as single people, with the world around us. And that made me feel, it provided comfort for me. And I think that one of the things that I would say is that when the pandemic started, I was not prepared for Zoom. I didn't want it. I like meeting people and having tea with them and just talking. Zoom has given us the ability, like it or not, to meet people from all over the world. And so I am actually more grateful than I expected to be. 3 years into this? But I do understand that this piece about living alone makes us feel as if we are isolated. But I think that this understanding of the universality, the connection, Thich Nhat Hanh would talk about the interbeing, that we're all connected. That part provides some comfort. Thank you for your question.
Yes, thank you very much. Because there are a lot of, as you look around the screen, there are a lot of people living by themselves on this screen. So thank you very much. Craig.
Thank you, Janet, and thank you, Valerie. I have a comment as well as a question. And the comment is in furtherance of Black History and Black History Month. It's interesting that you mentioned St. Augustine. And I say that to say essentially St. Augustine's mother was named Santa Monica. The city in which, was named, in which we live, is named after her. My question, I guess, is along the lines of your topic and being hybrid. I was operating under the premise that Nirvana was a person, but maybe it occurred to me that it could have been a spiritual, I guess you could say, echelon, or a spiritual entity or discipline in and of itself, or spiritual state. If indeed it's the former, I have to operate under the premise that the person was progressive and he had challenges in dealing with those that opposed him. If indeed it's the spiritual state, could you more or less lay out, I guess you could say, the intricate similarities between what you practice under Catholicism and that which is of Nirvana?
Let me think about your question a little bit. What I would say first is, having gone to Catholic school, I did not realize that that Saint Augustine or his mother Monica were actually African and from North Africa. So that was news to me as an adult. Nirvana is, or Parinirvana, is the state that the Buddha is in. Nirvana, let me back up for a second and just say, when the Buddha died at 80, he was Parinirvana is the eternal state in which he will not suffer anymore. I cannot explain to you the connection that I see in Catholicism. I will say this, and I'm going to say why I don't can't answer that question, is that I was taught as a Catholic that in going to heaven, that's assuming that you're going to heaven, that you will not suffer anymore. So in that way, I guess there is a comparison between Nirvana and heaven. The challenge for me is that I have no answers about what happens to us when we die. I've been told that we will reunite with our loved ones. But for me to give a definitive answer about that, I cannot do that. And I hope that I can continue to think about, and I will talk to my teachers about your question. But this is one of the things that I don't have an answer about. I don't know what happens to us. And so I wish I had a better answer for you, but I have to acknowledge my limitations.
Thank you. Thank you for your honesty. Audrey.
Hi, good morning, everyone. And thank you, Valerie. What an interesting talk. I struggle a little with the idea of spirituality. I don't have a problem with it. I just don't really know what it means. And so I'm curious, how do you distinguish spiritual friendship from regular friendship?
So let me say this about spirituality first. And I apologize if you see a tail darting behind me or in front of me, because he is on the move right now. So I apologize. Spirituality, I see, but I think it's for all of us, is what is important to us, what the values that we hold. And so it might feel like a spiritual experience to go surfing for some people because they're connected with nature and what they consider the divine. Spiritual friendship, in the context that I was talking about, is not just a buddy that you hang out with. And spiritual friendship, let me give you some of the characteristics. There are 4 kinds of spiritual friends. The helpful friend protects you when you are careless, looks after you, gives you refuge, tells you when they think that you are wrong or that you're not looking at it quite the right way. It's a friend who shares both happiness and suffering. It's a friend who points out what is good And it's also a friend who rejoices both in what we call sympathetic friendship and good fortune, and stops those who comments or speaks poorly about you to talk about the attributes that that person sees. I think that from my experience, there are people that I know, or there are people that I interact with that are just colleagues. I'm saying just colleagues or just people that I associate with, but my friends are the people, my spiritual friends are the people that I have discussions with about the things that are truly important with me or to me. In June, I met with one of the Sangha members, and we sat and talked for 5 hours. And in Starbucks, we wanted to become friends. And I don't know the last time. I think it was probably college or in my early 20s when I just sat with somebody for 5 hours and we talked about our lives and what was important to me. And we try every month to get together. It hasn't been for 5 hours because she has a family and I'm in school. But that is the difference. We talk about our joys and our sorrows and our struggles. And I think particularly at a time when society, we don't get to recover from one tragedy before there's another. And so I think that it's important to have those people in our lives that we're able to really communicate the things that are in our heart, the things that weigh heavily on our hearts, and also the things that bring us joy.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Linda?
Thank you. There was so much in this that that I appreciated, Valerie, your talk so much, and it was so rich. But I also know that we've gone on a little while. So I want to just mention one of the things that I thought that I want to say in response to what you said. Every morning when I open my email, I read the email from the Equal Justice Initiative as well. I read about Sergeant Woodard. I teach about Sergeant Woodard. I'm a history teacher. So not only do I but I'm not teaching this semester, but I reread that because I think it's really important for us to know. But I also want to say that I every morning also open the email from the Zen education program or project, because I think that when I read the emails from the Equal Justice Initiative, I see pain, I see suffering, but I do not see right action. I do not see struggle. I do not see courage. And we need both. We need to understand, but we also need to be inspired. And the history of those who have fought and won and lost and continue is absolutely necessary. I mean, hope is faith in action. And so I read both. And I want to encourage everyone to read. If you're going to read one, read the other as well. Because it is not okay to stay in, I think the Equal Justice Initiative in general stays in victimhood. And I think we need to stay in courage.
Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. I would just comment briefly that first of all, I didn't learn about Woodard in high school. I actually learned about him through reading about Pauli Murray, who I'd never heard of either. And Pauli Murray is someone that you probably, if you haven't heard the name before, I like to use the word behoove. It will behoove you to look her up. She actually was the person who formulated the argument for Brown versus the board, but she doesn't get credit for that. And she became a minister late in life. She also, or I should say they also would probably consider themselves transgender, and suffered a great deal because of how Pauli saw themselves as opposed to the way in which the world saw them. So I will say that, yes, EJI's emails do have a lot of suffering, but it's important to me to understand that I sent, there was something recently or maybe a few months ago that I sent to my classmates because it involved the lynching of Chinese Americans. And this history that we don't know is important. But I also agree that you have to balance it with something that will keep us motivated and going. And the thing that keeps me motivated as a social worker, I wanted to be able to help the children and families and later the adults. I should have said I was working at hospice when my parents died, so I couldn't do that work. But my work has always been about service. And I hope that that in hearing the truth, I guess I want to say one more thing. In hearing the truth that that it won't make us feel paralyzed, but actually motivate us to continue working for justice. I would say one other thing about this victim piece. It's hard not to be a victim when it continues to happen. And while I do not, while I do, I have trouble in general with how we have started to think about victimhood or victims in a way that becomes troubling. So I think I understand the intent in which you meant it, because yes, it does bring up these negative things. But I also feel like in a world where the governor of Florida is trying to decide what can be taught, or other states are trying to decide what should or should not be taught, it causes a dilemma for me in terms of how do we hold both things. And I guess that's the other thing that I feel as a 63-year-old woman is there are victims and they're also good people. But I think that I have to be able to hold those two things simultaneously. And so I appreciated what you said about reading both the EJI and the Zen Education website.
Thank you so much, Valerie. And thank you, Linda, for bringing, that was a wonderful conversation. Laureen?
Thank you, Valerie, for your talk. I have been talking with Janet a little bit and some other people from the church community about our efforts to raise money to open the doors. And today, on today's your talk, Valerie, I heard something that really resonated with me about spiritual friendship. To me, friendship is very much tied with, I think you said, service. Maybe that is it. Of course, there's other things too, pain and joy, I think Hurley Jim said. But I just want to say, I come here in part, I think that really summed it up for me. You know, what I like about this church and why I show up here when I can show up is for spiritual friendship. And the act of showing up is in itself service in a way. I'm motivated by seeing these activist, concerned people. I'm motivated by hearing the different faith presentations that show up here. But to wrap it up, I'm really interested in hearing, and I don't know what the right way to do this is. People can email me if you want. I'll put my number in my email in the chat, but I think it will help us to open the doors to know a little more about what this means. You know, even some little sentences, you know, what does this mean to you? Why do you show up? What does the church do? It resonated with me today to hear spiritual friendship. And so I'd love to know more from other people. That's a desire I have.
I think that's important. And I think that the gentleman that asked, I think it was Abby, I think that's who it was in the beginning, who asked about being alone. This connection on Zoom, but also just being able to talk the old-fashioned way on the phone will reduce our isolation, but also could help us with some of the struggles or the thoughts that we have. And I was remiss because I didn't mention the spiritual friendship between Martin Luther King and Thich Nhat Hanh. They only met once, but their letters and their correspondence, and there's a lovely book called Beloved Community that talks about the relationship between the two men. Because initially, Martin Luther King was not speaking out against the war. And it was because of Thich Nhat Hanh and his relationship with him that allowed him to do that. Now, we forget that he being Martin Luther King, took a lot of heat for his stance on the war. And so it's challenging, but each man took the other one to a place that they wouldn't have gone on their own. And so I think that this piece around spiritual friendship can help all of us grow more deeply. Thank you, Laureen.
Thank you so much, Valerie, and all of you for your comments and your questions. It's been a very rich morning and inspiring. And I really hope that you will find somehow to get back with us, Valerie, because I feel like you add a lot to our community. Thank you so much.
I would love to be able to do that. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
In honor of Black History Month, I'm playing one of Duke Ellington's songs, I Got It Bad and That Ain't Good. It's one of my favorite songs. I grew up with Duke Ellington's music. And in his bio, it says that he was the greatest jazz composer and band leader of his time, one of the originators of big band jazz. And I didn't know, but he wrote symphonies as well as popular music. So here's some pop for you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Jean.
Okay, let us thank you very much, everyone, as we prepare now for the benediction and then our closing ritual. The benediction. Divine Spirit, go with us as we befriend others and inspire present friendships. Go with us as we experience the sorrows and joys of teamwork. Go with us into the darkness to embrace the light and bring new life. May grace and peace guide us and direct us, now and always. Amen. So we're going to unmute at this time, everybody unmute. And we're going to stretch out around the world, around our present, beyond our present environment. And we stretch out to those who are listening, those who are seeing us. And even by our stretching out, we build new friendships and new hope. So we say together after 1, 2, 3, carry on.
Carry on.
Carry on.
Carry on.
Carry on.
And the nice thing about it.
Carry on.
Carry on.
Good morning.
Carry on.